Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this press meeting with a very distinguished guest today. And I'm absolutely thrilled to invite and welcome the NASA Administrator, Bill Nelson, who is joining us, just coming out fresh from the meeting in the Council. Alongside with Bill, we have Pam Melrose, who's Deputy Administrator of NASA. We have also people who have seen the Earth from space around the table, and we'll certainly talk about that later on. And on ESA, we have Council Chair Anna Hartzman, who's joining us as well, and Director General Josef Aschbacher. So this session, and I'm Philippe Wilkens, the Head of Communication, to serve this session, which is about an hour, a little less than an hour. We'll finish around 1:30 today. We have mainly the questions sent to us via the email system at media@esa.int. If you still have some questions, we can take them on board. I'll be notified and read your questions over and pass this to our panelists. So without any delay, this session is live on ESA Web TV, will be recorded, and you'll be able to go and revisit that at ESA after the session. So thank you very much to our participants to be starting this session, and I would like to invite first our Council Chair to give a few words of introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And as you have just heard, that we have had two very special international guests today. And on behalf of all the 22 member states, we are so honored that we have both the NASA Administrator, Bill Nelson, and also the Deputy Administrator, Pam Melrose, here in this room, and also being part of ESA Council. This is actually first time we have this kind of honored guest inside at our council meeting. And I think it's your presence here is in this particular moment when we have this difficult and challenging time, highly appreciated by all our member states. And it's important for us. And by being here in council, you show how strong the ESA-NASA cooperation relation is. And we are at an historic height in terms of bilateral cooperation. And today, during the council meeting, the ESA member states approved further cooperation with NASA with signing two different agreements, one on Earth observation and one on lunar activities. I'll just say some few words about these two agreements, and then I leave the floor to you, Josef. The first one covers Earth observation. The member states approved both the framework agreement for strategic partnership in Earth system science. In this case, is that ESA and NASA will support a global response to climate change through the monitoring of the Earth and its environment with combined efforts in Earth science observation, research, and application. And this will be really critical support to adaptation and mitigation measures. The other one is the Memorandum of Understanding concerning the Lunar Pathfinder mission. The UK company SSTL is already building the Lunar Pathfinder, the first commercial lunar telecommunication relay satellites available for users worldwide. ESA signed up last year to buy services from SSTL, and now NASA has agreed to launch the spacecraft in exchange for access to these services. In the context of this ESA-NASA collaboration, tests will be made of using satellite navigation signals and laser ranging to demonstrate a satellite navigation positioning fix in lunar orbit for the first time. This test will be a valuable step towards moonlight. Whose vision is to create a network of communications and navigation satellites supporting human exploration, just as today we are navigating using Galileo and GPS on Earth. So by this, we show that how agencies show how to tap innovation out of the private sector and work in partnership with the private sector. So, and also I would like to add something that is a little bit besides what we're talking about NASA, who is the main thing here. that we also, during this council meeting, we have been welcoming with us, with the council, the Slovak State Secretary Polis, with whom we have signed today an association agreement expanding from the exciting cooperation agreement signed in 2010. So by that, I end my part, and I leave the floor to you, Josef.
So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Chair of ESA Council, and of course a very, very big thank you, but also warm welcome to the Administrator of NASA, Bill Nelson, and the Deputy Administrator, Pam Melroy. It is really unique to have NASA with us here at the ESA Council, and this is such an important moment for us in Europe, in ESA, and I really would like to very warmly thank you for that. Maybe I should really highlight that we have made big friendship by pointing to the two pins which are on my jacket, which we have exchanged yesterday, and which symbolize our very strong partnership. The partnership is extremely strong. It goes back to many decades of very close cooperation on many domains. But since the 24th of February, I have to say that this partnership intensified even more because the world order has changed and is still changing. And this is also something that, of course, in Europe we have felt very clearly, and also in space. And in space, I have to say that the hand which was reached out by NASA to us was very welcome and very much appreciated, because it does help us also pointing the way forward on where and how we need to go forward in the next couple of years and decades on some activities. And of course, I'm mentioning in particular ExoMars, which is something where our friends and partners across the Atlantic, NASA has immediately offered help to conduct studies and see how we can move forward on the ExoMars mission. I do not want to have too many pre-conclusions, because these discussions are still ongoing. Of course, decisions on the side of ESA need to be made at the Ministerial Council, but what I really can say is that I've received a very strong letter from the Administrator, from Bill, outlining some potential elements of cooperation which are very, very important for us in Europe to find a good way forward for the ExoMars mission. Of course, we have long-standing cooperations on Artemis and the Gateway, as it is very well known. We are building the European service modules, one of them, the first one, being on the SLS right now, doing the wet dress rehearsal, and looking forward to a launch coming up very soon. And this is certainly a very important contribution we are very proud and very happy to give on the side of Europe, and also really happy to see that NASA trusts Europe as its partner on doing this together. And this is part of, we are on the critical path, as we call it. That means without this part, NASA could not go back to the moon. And I think this is something that is quite important. And I think this is also showing that NASA is really relying on Europe, on ESA, as its trusted partner for many of these operations. Of course, in addition to the contributions to the SLS, we also prepare contributions to the Gateway, of course, ESPRI and IHAP being the main components, but also others, in exchange for astronaut flights, which NASA is offering us. And we're very happy that we have a number of flights lined up, which are both for this to continue to go to the space station, but also 3 flights to the Gateway. And this, of course, is extremely important for us Europeans, eventually also having European footprints on the on the moon surface. And this is a partnership which is very, very strong. On Mars exploration, we work also very closely on Mars sample return. Again, together with ExoMars and Mars sample return, we have a number of activities that we are planning together in order to really go beyond the next frontiers, which are, of course, the low Earth orbit and the moon, towards Mars. And this cooperation is very, very solid and is really being built up, again, with key decisions to be made at the ESA Ministerial in November. Also, one important element is an instrument which is provided by NASA, already foreseen before on ExoMars, called MoMA, which is an important element for the ExoMars mission. And already today, the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter is relaying data back from Perseverance, for example, back to Earth from a very important, of course, NASA rover. Earth observation and Earth science was mentioned, also extremely important because that supports climate change. Needless to say how important this is, and the US and Europe joining forces here, providing key data for climate change is crucial, and I'm very happy also there that we have signed an agreement. Also personally, I've initiated some of this in my previous position as Director of Earth Observation, and very happy to see this agreement now signed, which I think is essential for the future of our planet, literally, where we use our best assets we have from space in order to understand our planet and help mitigating the effects of climate change. Let me stop here and hand over really to Bill for his statements, but really with a big thank you from my side to come to us, to speak to us, and to further cement this very strong cooperation which we have. Thank you, Bill.
Good afternoon. Pam and I are very honored to be invited to be an official part of the council meeting of ESA. The first time I've been told that that has been done, so this is indeed an honor for the two of us. And I think how Joseph has outlined just all of the projects that we're doing together is illustrative of the close working relationship that we have. Pam and I are on a multi-nation trip, each concentrating in the space arena. Yesterday, for example, day before, I was with the University of Edinburgh with the principal investigator, Dr. Wright, who is the principal investigator on a major instrument that is collecting infrared light on the James Webb Space Telescope, which is going to give this phenomenal revelation to us of who we are and what we are and where we came from in this universe that is so expansive that my mind has trouble conceiving it. This telescope, and part of Dr. Wright's and ESA's contribution, is receiving the light that has traveled at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, for 13.5 billion years. Now, that's a pretty big space. And we are just beginning to conceive and understand. And this is just one example of many others that are currently ongoing where we participate with ESA. I presented a photograph to Joseph today of the largest rocket ever that will launch likely in a couple of months. The SLS with Orion on the top. On the side of that rocket is proudly displayed not only the NASA emblem, but the ESA emblem as well. So it's a joint venture, and we are very grateful to our partners from Europe. So thank you. Pam and I leave here today, and we go on to Rome, where in the morning the Prime Minister's cabinet has asked us to come and speak to them. And then we're on to meet with government leaders and the space interest and companies in Berlin. and then from there on to Bremen, where the European Service Module, which is a critical component of the Orion spacecraft on top of the SLS rocket, otherwise known generically as Artemis, in this case, the first Artemis. We will go on to Bremen and talk with the ESA representatives there that are responsible for the European Service Module. So we are grateful for your hospitality and thank you for your invitation.
Please, Pam, you have a few words also of introduction.
It's really hard to go after those. I just will echo the remarks of the administrator. What an honor it is to be here. We have such a strong collaboration. I think what we're finding is the communications is such a critical part of strengthening and deepening that relationship. And perhaps historically in the past, we've had a summit maybe once a year to have a discussion. It is just not enough. And from my perspective, the complexity and the breadth of the way that we are cooperating across science, human spaceflight, in so many dimensions, climate change, that to have this opportunity to meet with the ESA membership and the ESA leadership has been absolutely tremendously rewarding and very productive. So we thank you again for the honor of inviting us to join you.
Thank you very much. So, Administrator Nelson, you refer to a very inspiring, extremely inspiring mission, James Webb Space Telescope. I will start with a question from a German newspaper, Süddeutsche Zeitung. This is Dieter Zurich, who is asking, Mr. Nelson, NASA and ESA launched the James Webb back in December 22nd on the Ariane 5. Is it conceivable that NASA would use more Ariane to launch from Cape Canaveral? I'm reading the question, so.
The Ariane 5, to be replaced by the Ariane 6, would launch not from Cape Canaveral, would launch from Kourou, French Guiana, at the spaceport there. I'm not sure what the intent of the question is, but the ultimate answer is I do not know. I think it's always subject. We'll see once the Ariane 6 flies and its capability. It will certainly have a niche in the world launch market. And let me just give kudos to the Ariane. The Ariane 5 was right on the mark. It was so accurate on its Christmas morning launch that any additional fuel that the spacecraft had to expend in order to get into the proper position to get inserted in the neutrally buoyant point 1,000,000 miles from Earth, the spacecraft didn't have to expend the fuel, and therefore has all the more fuel for its station keeping, and now estimated to be 20 years of enough fuel.
Thank you, and bear with me, I'm reading the question. So since we are in a new era, few journalists can move to Holland, so let's move from Germany and to Denmark. And here I have a question from Thomas Schumann from Radio 4. He's asking, you're a politician, right? So your sales pitch for the nations in Europe to sign on the Artemis Accords, why should a country like Denmark sign this accord?
Denmark, the home of my ancestors. Well, first of all, space is the place. Space is where it's happening now. Space is where so many of the new creations and inventions are occurring. Look at the space economy, and what does that mean? That means jobs. That means gross national product. That means scientific advancement. That means breaking through the barriers. That means helping us solve our earthly problems, like the earth is heating up, and we better measure it. If we're going to mitigate it, we better measure it and be accurate. But on top of that, think what space does for children. You want to know the value of space and your participation, the citizens of Denmark, in space? Go talk to any of your school kids. Talk to them about space and watch how their interest is suddenly focused and how they get interested in science and mathematics and engineering and technology. That ought to be enough right there. But space is also inspirational. And when Europe flies an astronaut, as indeed 3 European astronauts have flown recently, there's a great deal of pride in that. And justifiably so. So I've just given you reasons for starters as to why Denmark or any other country and its people ought to be interested in space.
Thank you very much for that pitching and very inspiring response. Let's go to France now. Stéphane Sibyl from Souvenir d'Espace is asking a bit more concretely, looking at this time, when and which Artemis mission can we expect to have a European astronaut on board and on the surface of the moon?
I don't know the answer to it, but we are definitely planning on it. A lot of that, of course, depends on how quickly we are able to land on the moon. I can tell you that the first landing that presently we are targeting for 2025, but as you know, space is complicated and there could be slips. But we are targeting for 2025 to have the first woman and the next man to land on the moon. And then what the composition of the crews are after that is all to be worked out and negotiated between the European Space Agency, between other nations, and the U.S. And we're looking forward to that. And we take this as an international program. We consider this international partnership that is so evident on the side of the big rocket right now that's sitting on pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. We take this partnership very seriously, and we will look forward to having an ESA astronaut with us on the moon at a future time.
Thank you. Joseph? Pam, you would like to add something?
I just wanted to highlight the fact that as a part of the Artemis program, we also have the Gateway, which is an orbiting logistics staging point for going down to the moon, but also a test bed for technologies for Mars transportation. The ESA contribution of the IHAB habitation and the Esprit refueling module are particularly critical to that gateway early in the Artemis program. And we are absolutely intending that an ESA astronaut will support those missions to Gateway. And as the administrator said, as we then progress to landings on the moon, we are sure that ESA will be with us there too.
Joseph Aschbacher, maybe the European viewpoint on that.
The European viewpoint, I can first of all only express my gratitude for this partnership, and as it was laid out by Bill and Pam in terms of our contributions in order to get in exchange flights to the Gateway and to the moon surface. Of course, this is all in the hands of NASA to give the right timing, and I can only express a wish, if I may, but the wish is maybe granted or not. I think this all depends. Certainly, I would hope that it would be before the end of this decade, but as I said, this is my wish, which is well known to Bill and which is well known to our NASA colleagues, but I'm perfectly aware that there are a lot of complicated steps ahead. We all know that space is very complex, and therefore we have to be absolutely sure that it is safe, and safe means that time is needed to mitigate risks, and therefore the time will be defined by all the next steps that have to be taken. So I'm perfectly aware of that. Of course, I do have a big hope. Thank you.
Jonathan Amos, BBC, is asking from the UK, can you describe how ESA and NASA will work together to fly the ExoMars rover, who will perform and which function, descent module, launch rockets, and so on, and what will be the impact of this proposal on the mass sample return architecture?
That is being discussed and is under consideration, and that's what we're prepared to say today, that we really want to help ESA given the circumstances that is very unfortunate in which they find themselves because of the Russian situation. And we're going to try to work it out for them.
Joseph, would you like to comment?
No, I think this is what can be said at this point of time. There is still a lot of intense discussions ongoing. There are some obvious elements that are being elaborated, and we are negotiating them. In fact, I also have my director of human and robotic exploration with me, David Parker, who is these very moments discussing with NASA and what these elements can be. I don't want to go too deep because this is, I think, very important. What maybe can be said is that there are some critical elements where Europe would be very grateful to receive the support of NASA. I think they are well known and well understood, but I think it is up to NASA to really elaborate on this further. But I think it's going the right way, and I'm very confident that we find a good partnership also on ExoMars. And of course, having said that, the final decision on our side is with our member states, because this is part of the package which is in the ministerial proposal, and all this has to be wrapped up nicely so that we have a good way forward.
Thank you. I will combine two questions, one coming from Swiss Info, Marc-André Miseré, and Martin Valech from Czech News Center. Both questions are related to the future of the ESA-NASA missions and projects being affected by the war in Russia. What is your viewpoint? It's probably essentially reflecting in the second question the ISS in particular. So are you taking Mr. Rogozin's remark and threats on social media to be taken very seriously? And how is the mood on board of the ISS right now?
Remember that we have on board the space station right now an ESA astronaut, Samantha, who, by the way, Pam and I will talk to by direct communication link on Friday with members of the Italian government. And also on the station are Russian cosmonauts and American astronauts. And they are all very professional. The relationship between the mission control in Houston and in Moscow is very professional. And let us remind ourselves that this is an international flight. Despite the tragedies that are occurring in Ukraine by President Putin, the fact is that the international partnership is solid when it comes to the civilian space program.
Thank you. I have a question from Interfax news agency, Russian news, regarding the seat swap agreement. If you have any update on that, would you like to comment? There's a secondary question there related to the situation, whether this would be extended with the swap with Europe. So I don't know if Joseph would like to comment that, but first, Bill.
Yes, we are proceeding on the seat swap. It is important in order to run the space station that you have both an American and our partner ESA and other partners on the station at the same time with a Russian crew. And that's because there are two components of the International Space Station that are essential to each other. The production of electricity with regard to the American component, the propulsion coming from the Russian component. Therefore, we will proceed on that basis. Now, what is the question? How is the question defined from there?
Question is an update on the seat.
On the seat swap. Yes. So, therefore, because you need both, you want to always be assured that you have both. And therefore, one way of doing that is that you integrate the crew, an American astronaut flying on the Soyuz and a Russian cosmonaut flying on the American vehicle. In this case, it is the SpaceX Dragon, soon to be joined by the Boeing Starliner. So that you have both, so that if one happened to the other, you would still have that international crew that could operate the International Space Station.
Thank you. Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now, a question for ESA DG and Administrator Nelson. Are there any possibility to incorporate the ExoMars rover into the Mars sample return architecture? I think you already addressed part of that answer. Or is it the priority still to fly it as a standalone mission? Maybe Joseph? Yeah.
No, certainly this is the priority. So if the question aims at, and maybe that's the reading between the lines, to merge the two, no, this is not the case. The ExoMars mission with landing the Rosalind Franklin rover is still a separate mission, of course, in cooperation with NASA, as we have just discussed before, but it is not a joint mission, if that is the purpose of this question. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from Leo Enright, Irish TV here for Josef Aschbacher. Can you talk about countries that do not contribute to the optional human space flight program? Are they missing an opportunity? Does this mean that women and men from countries like Ireland have no real prospect of walking on the moon during the Artemis program?
I can only say they do miss opportunities. It's very clear participating in the human and robotic exploration program is not only inspiring, it's also extremely important for, I think, a country, because inspiration and also industrial participation is the DNA of how we work in ESA in order to enable opportunities. So yes, I can only encourage every single country to fully participate and strongly participate in the human robotic exploration program. There and nowhere.
Thank you. We are getting to the end of the list of questions that I have. There is one question on the Ariane 6 vehicle development and launch schedule, but I would like to invite the journalists to join us into a specific press conference that we will organize on this on the 13th of July after a certain number of milestones that will happen. So the last question, which I have here on my list, is still focused on the consequence of the war in Ukraine. Are there any other projects affected by that? Are there other projects? So yes, Joseph and
Yes, on our side there are. In fact, you can say almost every project is affected because there are many components, raw materials, where we, which have been bought, I should say, or which have been provided through Russia. I'd name Titan tanks as one example, and many spacecraft do need them. So in the components parts, yes, there are many impacts. However, we have a very clear path forward on to mitigate this, and we have clear new ways of partnerships, contracts with other suppliers, mostly in Europe or in some other cases also from our American partners. But the big items, of course, are ExoMars. I think this is well documented and was well explained. Luna was also explained at the previous press briefing after a previous council meeting, Luna 25, 26, 27. And Soyuz, this continuation of launching Soyuz from Kourou, of course, has a major impact on us as well, because we have now a number of satellites that need to be launched, but the Soyuz vehicle is not anymore available, and there we are now investigating different options, different paths. On one side, of course, we look forward to the inaugural flight of Vega C, today planned on the 7th of July. We are consolidating this date right now, so but this is certainly happening very soon. And of course, we are also preparing for the inaugural flight of Ariane 6, which will then absorb some of these opportunities. So these are certainly elements we are looking into at the moment, and yes, there are impacts, but let me also say that we have discussed them at length with our member states. It is also fair to say that we are all convinced that we want to come out of this crisis stronger. That means we need to increase the robustness and the autonomy of some of the components in space, from small to big. And this is exactly what is at the heart also of the reshaped ministerial proposal, which we are preparing for November.
Thank you very much. We are getting to the end and the time. We're only 2 minutes over the projected time. This to say that we have a possibility for another meeting with the media at the next council. It will be probably a much broader debriefing from the various decisions taken. This will be held from Tallinn in Estonia on the 13th of July. But before closing, I would like to give the word to the council chair. And since there was a question on the mood on space station, the question here is, what is the mood in the room in view of the ministerial meeting coming up in November?
I think the mood in general is very good, but of course there's a lot of questions raised, and specifically with the situation in Ukraine and the impact on the program itself. But I think what is positive, if we can say so, with this thing happening in Ukraine is that the interest, the general interest of space has increased, I think, in a lot of member states. And that is very positive itself, because they see the essence of why the infrastructure in space is so important for the Earth, because it's really the infrastructure of Earth, actually. So I think it's a lot of questions, but it should be, in this phase, it should be a lot of questions, a lot of discussions, and to find the best way forward. But I'm very positive for the work that we're doing in front of the minister meeting.
Excellent, and I'm absolutely thrilled to see also how the friendship is going on between ESA and NASA, along with the two persons sitting there and all the other ones that are working very hard for this cooperation. I would like to really, in the name of ESA and everyone who is in the room and following us, to thank you very much for taking the time. Wish you a very good trip with Pam and your team across Europe. Give the good sales pitch for us and supporting the activities, advocating, as you say. So thank you very much. Thank you, Joseph, for your answers, and see you very soon in about a month from now in this same configuration.